So this is part two of our engine install on the Pilatus upgrade, Perry the Platypus airplane.
Perry the Platypus!
If you're not into aviation, this video is going to be so boring. I mean, check out now, save yourself the old thumbs down experience. Even if you're into airplanes, if you're not into the Pilatus, and if you're not in, even if you're into Pilatus and you don't care about the difference between the Papa motor that's in the NG Pilatus or now in Perry and the old legacy Pilatus, the Bravo motors, if those numbers don't matter to you, see ya. Catch us on another video. If you do care, stick around. It's going to be a lot of talk, a little bit of fun numbers. Hopefully you learned something from it. But otherwise, thanks for checking out, and we'll catch you on another video that's not so just number based. First off, a disclaimer. Performance and numbers and data only matter at certain altitudes and certain temperatures and certain weights. So I'm going to use rules of thumb because I want this information to stick in your head the way I have to make it stick in my head. I'm not smart enough to remember all the numbers for all the altitudes and all the weights. I have to get out my books here and look at it. But while I was flying, we went all over the place, and I took my spreadsheets with me and on a little iPad, and I took screenshots of the dash. I got thousands of them in my phone. Some of you, I know you know what I'm talking about. We just want the numbers, real numbers, not what do I think or how does it feel, but like what's the data. So 100 hours was pretty easy to come by in the Pilatus. During this time, we have our home and business here in Utah, but we also have a home in Galveston, Texas. It's about 1,200 miles away. And so that's 4 hours out and 5 hours back average. So just to go to Texas and back is 9 hours on the airplane. So lots of time sitting there where I can climb up 1,000, 2,000 feet, climb up 2,000 feet again, drop down, play with different power, torques, and temp settings. And I just gather data all the way down and back several trips. We also got to go out, and Mike and I were invited to be the keynote speakers at the Wright Brothers event out in Oshkosh. And that was a very special event and a really great time, and a great time to go get some more numbers as the weather was getting colder. And we even took the plane up with the new engine up into Johnson Creek, Idaho, and did a bunch of grass strip takeoff and landings with the back of it loaded up with e-bikes. So we've got real world data, camping, mountain biking, long cross country in the cold, long cross country down into the heat, and here's the numbers. We're going from the Bravo motor to the Papa motor. Biggest differences on the Bravo motor, we have a maximum of 44 on the torque, which is 1,200 horsepower for takeoff and up to 5 minutes. On the Papa motor, we have 1,200 horsepower for the entire duration of the climb. That's 200 horsepower more for the bulk of your climb. The Bravo motor has a max continuous temperature limit of 760 degrees. Down low, that doesn't make a big difference. Up high, that's a huge difference. The new Papa motor has a maximum continuous temperature of 820 degrees. It's 60 degrees higher temp that it can run continuously without concern. And if 820 scares you, here's the number that really kind of blows my mind. They actually allow, Pratt & Whitney allows 850 degrees for takeoff. As in, that's safe. So 820 for max continuous is pulling it way back from there, and I generally fly about 40 degrees cooler than max continuous anyway, because I like to have a little safety margin. You can also fly off the torque chart if that's how you like to do it. This is the rule of thumb in a Pilatus. Every 200 pounds of weight is 1 knot true airspeed at altitude. Down lower, it's not as significant. Up higher, the higher you go, the more significant it is. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. I had someone messaged on Facebook because I posted a picture of the speeds I was doing in the Pilatus. I was up cruising around 280 knots true airspeed at altitude. And someone commented, how's that even possible? I have an NG Pilatus that never goes that fast. This is roughly what my true airspeed is. And I looked at the true airspeed. I'm like, okay, he's probably got at least 6 or 7 people in there, and probably took that picture, you know, in the first hour of the flight, because I could just back out the weight and time of day and see where it was. But in this case scenario, 1,200 pounds is 6 knots true airspeed. So of course, I'm flying pretty quick depending on how much fuel you have in the plane. The other thing is in that flight, it's just me and my wife. There's nobody with us. So if you've got 8 passengers at 200 pounds apiece, 1,600 pounds at 200 pounds per knot, that's 8 knots. So between fuel and passengers, that's just those things, 2 things alone. All of a sudden we're talking about 6 plus 8. It's a big number.
What's 9 plus 10?
21.
So when you talk to people about speeds in your airplane, don't ever give a ground speed. Like, stop it, knock it off, guys, because we don't care how strong the winds were. When someone says, how fast is your airplane? They're not asking, hey, how were the winds today? Otherwise, they would say, how are the tailwinds today? They want to know, how fast is your airplane?
Wow, 13.
No,
Yeah.
no, there was wind.
I was just jogging.
Dwight, there was wind.
So if someone's saying, oh, this is about the speed my Pilatus is, yours is a lot faster, or mine's a lot faster, well, what's the power setting? And if they're saying, oh, I usually cruise at 700 degrees, or I cruise at 740 degrees, then you can say, well, if you're comparing 700 degrees to 740 degrees, every 20 degrees is 5.5 knots and 15 pounds an hour. You can say, well, you're burning 30 pounds an hour more fuel, but that's 11 knots. So real world data. So if you're now looking at, back to the comparison, what really matters to me is I go from a Bravo motor with a max continuous of 760. And I like to fly 40 degrees back from there, so say it's 740. And I don't want to get into whether that's good or bad or where you like to fly it. I'm just telling you, this is where it is for me. I'm not telling you that's how you should fly your airplane. But if you take a 760 max that you're flying at a safe 720 and you go to the Papa motor and it has an 820 max allowable by the manufacturer, 820 is safe, and you come back 40 from there, you're 780. Well, the difference between 720 degrees on your temp and 760 or 80 degrees on your temp is 60. 60 at 5.5 per 20 is 16.5 knots. That's the official number. That is what I have to report as how much faster is my Papa motor in my Pilatus, just changing the motor. And we got other mods we want to do too. I was able to pull some weight out of the airplane, and we'll get a weight and balance when we're all done with everything, because that makes a speed difference too. But if we're just looking at just the raw data, if you're just pulling out the Bravo, putting in the Papa, at altitude, it's 16.5 knots faster. That's awesome. Time to climb was a big thing. The numbers we were collecting was from sea level at gross weight to 28,000 feet. It was 7 minutes faster with this new motor. And we're talking about a gross weight PC-12 Series 10 with a Bravo motor, the stock motor, is 26 minutes to altitude, right? Depending on the day, right, and weight. But let's just, for the sake of the day and temperatures we were testing, it's 26 minutes to altitude. 7 minutes is a big freaking number because you're pulling it all the way back to 19 minutes. And not only is it less time in the climb, but usually up at the altitude is where the smooth air is. So it could also mean 7 minutes less bumps in the climb for your passengers, getting up over the hills and mountains. So comfort, 7 minutes more comfortable flight for your passengers. And once you level off, you're 7 minutes of doing 270 to 280 knots instead of that 7 minutes where you're climbing at 140, 150 indicated, which is more like 200 knots or so. I haven't done that math, but rule of thumb here, guesstimate, depending on the altitude. So 7 minutes less time in the bump, 7 minutes less time to altitude, 7 minutes more time at a high true airspeed at a lower fuel flow. The longer you're down in the thick air, the higher you're burning those high fuel numbers. That's a big deal. Still not my favorite part. The thing I didn't expect, we wanted the speed, we wanted the performance. The thing I didn't expect was the workload. Pilot workload is just gone to almost nothing. The reality is on the Bravo motor, when you push the throttle up, you can go right to the firewall, right? You've got a torque controller on that motor. that would and should, working properly, keep you from over torquing the engine. We go up slow and we watch and use proper pilot safety protocols. But if in theory everything working right, if you just hammer it, it'll go to 44 on your torque, which is 1200 horsepower. But on the Bravo motor, as soon as you're climbing, you get out of the pattern, you get your gear up, you get your flaps up, you pull the torque back to 36.9. But 1,000 feet later, which is less than 1 minute, your torque's down. So you grab the throttle and you push it back up. Oh, I over torqued it a little bit, come back down. And then another 1,000 feet, less than a minute later, you're like, oh, my power's dropped, because as you get into the thinner air, you get less performance. You have to keep pushing the throttle up to make up for the thin air. So now every 60 seconds or less, you're adjusting the power, adjust it a little bit too much, come back. Instead of switching radio frequencies, focusing on the next waypoint, changing the flight plan that they're giving to you in the air, and then all of a sudden looking over and go, whoa, no wonder I'm not climbing, I need to put some power to it. So with the new motor, you push it up and just fly the airplane. Don't mess with the throttle. Just leave it there. Just go. It's so much less work, especially on a dark, rainy, icy layer above you, departure out of California where they're switching radio frequencies faster than you can even get in the new heading and altitude they gave you, and now you're messing with the throttle. It's gone. And I didn't realize how much of a big deal that was, like how much safer and more relaxed you are as a pilot. I love it. I wish Spinoff would have told me that. I would have given them my money a lot sooner, because it's freaking awesome. The next question is going to be, what does it cost?
Me, everyone. Sex! Now that I have your attention.
You don't have our attention.
Money!
I'm listening.
There's several ways to look at this. Our engine was 500 hours from overhaul, and it would have been its second overhaul, so it'd be an expensive one. You have a 3,500 hour TBO, your first overhaul on a brand new engine, before $500,000, give or take, right? Your second overhaul, you go another 3,500 hours, that second overhaul is going to usually be a lot more expensive. And that could be $600,000. And these days things are getting more and more expensive. So for me, I put in my head about $600,000 to overhaul the engine. The new engine STC, everything done, was a $950,000 upgrade. But I'm already spending $600 to rebuild the motor. So it's really, if I'm already spent $600 by flying it for the last 3,500 hours since overhaul, or in my case, a little over 3,000, that money's gone. I spent it. I spent it over the last several years flying this plane back and forth across the country. So you already got 600 grand that you're going to put into the overhaul. So the real difference is 350,000 is the delta. The difference between overhauling, used, or just having a brand spanking new engine that, again, when you come to 3,500 hours, it's going to be the cheaper overhaul, not another really expensive one. So that 350,000 delta that we're really talking about, really by the time you get to the first round overhaul, that engine's probably more like $200,000 delta. Those are real numbers. It costs money to fly these engines, and they cost more to overhaul as they age. Oh my gosh, one more thing. Holy cow, this is ridiculous. This is also one of my favorite things. I almost left it out. I fly the airplane different, not just on the climb, not first segment, second segment, like we talked about. I fly it completely different because I go to altitude. In fact, Mike and I, on one of our trips, we were doing the comparison. We're like, the bigger engine at 26,000 feet is doing 16 knots faster, 16 and a half knots faster than it used to be, but it's burning 45 pounds an hour more fuel. But of course it's faster, it's burning more fuel. But you, instead of flying there where you used to, you go to 30,000 feet. Now you're burning the same fuel as the old smaller engine did down lower, but you're up here doing 16 and a half knots faster. So it's actually, because it can get to a higher altitude easier than it used to, the bigger engine is costing me less fuel per mile significantly than the smaller motor down low. So is it worth the $200,000 to $350,000 over just overhauling the engine? Oh my gosh, heck yeah. It's a new airplane. It's a faster airplane. It's a safer airplane. It's less work airplane. I could not be happier. I can see why the Pilatus NG is such a popular airplane. And I think every legacy Pilatus will end up with this engine upgrade, for sure. because it just makes sense.